Welcome to the Elokus podcast. This is class number 20 in the discourse Naso Rosh, which is the fourth discourse in the great book B'Shosh Hekdimu. So just a correction on yesterday. Yesterday, in the beginning of the class, I said it's class 18, which was a mistake because it was class 19. Okay, so those of you that were puzzled that you got two 18s on the description, it actually said 19, but in the recording, I mentioned class number 18. So that was 19, and this is class number 20. And this is going to be the second class in chapter 15 in the book. So we were learning yesterday, we began to trace the concept of subtle design, even on the most, in the potential of potential, in the hidden of the hidden, even into the shoresh of the kav, the root of the kav, the root of the thread that goes all the way into the Or Ein Sof, all the way, tracing it all the way back into the Or Ein Sof, in a concept called Esa Spherais Hagnuzais, that are 10 spherais, 10 attributes which are brought in the books of Kabbalah that speak of 10 spherais that are hidden b'matzilon in their emanator itself. That's in the light before the tzimtzum of the Or Ein Sof. So let's again just connect over here. So the main idea that we're developing over here is that the concept of spheros should not be relegated only to vessels, only to the kelim. One can make the argument, and it's not that when we say one could make the argument, there is such a shita, there is such an opinion, and that is the opinion of the Ramak in the book of Sefer HaPardes, where the Ramak very much blames, you see, we mentioned the Ramak yesterday. The Ramak was the great Ramosha Cordovero, who was the great Kabbalist, the leader of Kabbalah before the Holy Ari, in the 1550s, 1560s, at that time in the holy city of Tzvat. So his opinion on the concept of Sfirot is that the whole idea of the differentiations that differentiate the spheres is only stemming from the vessels, because the vessels are already an inyan of gavul, they're already an element of limitation. They stem from the Rishimu, which is the traces, the Kayach HaGavul of Hashem, and they are a product of tzimtzum. Actually, the Ramak didn't know of the secret of tzimtzum. That's actually the reason why the Ramak, we're not going to get into it right now, but maybe we'll get into it soon, why the Ramak was so insistent that the oiros, the lights, don't have any bit of design in them at all. Because the Ramak did not have the information of what is accepted today as an absolute truth of Kabbalah, that there is a notion called tzimtzum. So from the Ramak, there was a continuum from God directly to the creation. If there is a continuum directly from Hashem to the creation, then we could not say that the lights, which the lights are an emanation directly from Atzmos, from Hashem himself, that those lights have already designed, because since the lights are a reflection of him, and then you would be kind of limiting God himself, making God a composite of many different potentials or many different properties. And obviously everybody would have to understand that God is simple with utter simplicity, that the essence of God definitely does not have any bit of any trace of any limitations to place upon him. So since the Ramak was not privy to the idea of tzimtzum, and therefore to him there is a direct continuation from Hashem to the creation. Obviously it goes through a very, very long seder, a very long order of hishtalshalus, of evolution, and so on and so forth. So he must come up with something other than the light to blame on limitation, design, which is more the properties of creation. And that he blames on the kelim, on the vessels, and therefore the whole idea of gavul and limitation has nothing to do with the Or Ein Sof, has nothing to do with the Infinite One, because the Infinite One has no limitation whatsoever. The lights are absolutely pure, and even the lights of the Or Ein Sof that make their way into the kelim, into Atzilus, into the real spheres, according to the Ramak, there's a lot of new information I'm saying today, according to the Ramak, those lights remain utterly pashut. Even after they go into the kelim, they remain pashut, they remain simple. So there's a famous metaphor that the Ramak gives, that we spoke of before, but I didn't earlier blame it so much on the Ramak. But the Ramak is the one who gives this metaphor, where he speaks about water being poured into various different glass, in which the glass is of different color, and then the water appears to be red, green, yellow, in accordance to the color of the glass. And the Ramak points out that just like in that case, we all understand that the water is inherently not red, and the water inherently is not blue or not pink or green. The water remains pashut, even after it's in the keli. That's why the Ramak felt very strongly that the lights, which they are that's the power coming from God is infinite, simple, because it's coming from God, and God is simple and utterly infinite. You will have to ask, according to the Ramak, and that obviously would be the big question, where does the colorings begin? They begin in the kelim, but how did that happen? If there's nothing in the light, you'll have to say that it's a yesh mayayin. It's some kind of something from nothing that Hashem brings about, and that is just related regarding the kelim and the vessels. But we are going according to the shita of the Arizal, and this, which was the successor of the Ramak. Although he wasn't much of a student of his, he did hang around his yeshiva, but he had his own tradition of Kabbalah, and he became the next leader after Moshe Kardava. And as we mentioned other times, he only was a teacher for 2 years, but what he contributed to the world of mysticism and Kabbalah is unparalleled. And what the Arizal really, one of the great chidushim, one of the great novelties in the Kabbalistic discipline, in the teachings of Kabbalah, is the Arizal brings us the concept of a tzimtzum and of a contraction. And since the Arizal brings you a concept of tzimtzum, which means that there is a complete cut-off between what was and what later is, there is a complete metamorphosis taking place in between, because there is a tzimtzum and a block. And therefore, the Arizal is not so afraid to have design already in the light, because you can have design in the light, and it's not, and because the light is since the lights are going through the tzimtzum, so since tzimtzum is kind of a interceptor and a interference in the light, which creates a non-continuum. So therefore, even if the lights have design, like we were learning earlier, that the lights have subtle design, it's not necessarily saying that God himself has design. However, and that's the concept of that the Arizal says that the oiros are also mitzuyorim, that the lights also have tzior, they also have, obviously, that the tzior of the lights, which means the design of the lights, is not considered design in compared to the vessels. The vessels is where you have real design, because the vessels come from the oisius harishimu. They come from rishimu, which is the power of gavul, the power of limitation. So over there is real limitation. But the lights, they are coming from the kav, which breaks through the tzimtzum. So it's purely, it's plugging its way back. It's originating in Or Ein Sof, and therefore you can't really speak of it as having design. In other words, and that will agree with the Ramak. We can't really speak of it as having design. However, according to the Arizal, it does have not the type of design. He's creating a medium. It doesn't have the type of the design like the Kalim have, but it does have already a leaning towards already a leaning towards design. And for that very reason, like we've been learning in the earlier classes, when it goes into the Kalim, it actually absorbs the definitions of the Kalim into the light. And the light becomes limited with the limitations of the Kalim, gets imprinted with those limitations, because it already, before it landed in the vessels, these lights were predisposed already to these various definitions in the most subtle way. Now, according to this interpretation, according to the Arizal, we will, based on this we mentioned yesterday, we will go back to a concept that's mentioned in Kabbalah, which again is going to have a different interpretation according to the Ramak versus according to the Holy Ari. What are we talking about? There is a concept that's mentioned that there are eser sfiros hagnuzos b'matzilon, that there are hidden 10 sefirot that are hidden and embedded in their emanator, which means way above in the Or Ein Sof itself, there is already a discussion of 10 spheres. So how are we going to explain that? We would think that the whole concept of spheres is only a post-Tzimtzum. It's only later that this happens. It's only related to, right? Not early. So according to the Ramak, we will say that, the Or Ein Sof has already Esa Spheres Hagnuzos, because no one argues with that. That's an ancient concept that precedes and predates the Ramak. But according to Rav Moshe Kadava, what we will say is that in the Or Ein Sof, there has to be a Koach HaGvul, a power of limitation, because or else how will you end up with Kalim? How will you end up with vessels? So in the Koach HaGvul that's in the Or Ein Sof, which is the shoresh, which is the root of the kalim, not the root of the lights, which is the root of the kalim. Over there, in some way, we can't identify, but there is a notion of a hidden 10 spheres, which means some kind of a potential of 10 spheres, which is already meaning a subtle existence. Because the fact that there's a potential only for 10 spheres and not for a billion spheres, like we mentioned yesterday, means that it's, to some degree, it exists already there. But, however, what the Ramak is being very careful is that he cannot in any way say that that's in the Or itself, in the light itself, but rather in the shorish of the kalim that's in the Or, but not in the Or itself. It's in the root of the vessels that's in the light, but not in the light itself. Not in the root of the lights that will later go into the spheres, because the lights are partial. The lights are simple. And they remain simple. Even when they're in the vessels, they remain simple. Definitely when they're above the vessels, and definitely when they are still in the Or Ein Sof itself, in the original light itself, of course they are simple with utter simplicity. However, what we are learning now is, according to the Ari, notwithstanding the fact that the Arizal introduces the concept of a tzimtzum, and we therefore can argue that maybe the inyan of the concept of design of tzior is all post tzimtzum. And in what? And according to the Ari, we're going to say not just the vessels, but even the lights, right? Even the lights have already, but only after the tzimtzum. So here we're saying no, that the lights, the root of the lights is coming from the kav, remember? And the kav breaks through the tzimtzum. That's the whole idea of a kav. The whole idea of the kav is that, notwithstanding the fact that there is a tzimtzum, a total black and a total blocking of the original infinite light that was there before, the kav is the return of the Or Ein Sof. And therefore the lights that are post-tzimtzum are really inherently the very same light that was before the tzimtzum. And if we're going to tag on tzior and somewhat of sphirot, if you might say, already in the lights, at least after the tzimtzum, so we will then have tzior, somewhat of design, even in the lights before the tzimtzum. And then we'll scream, Gvald, how can you say in the lights? God forbid, how can you say in the lights any kind of tzior before the tzimtzum? It's Or Ein Sof. So that's why we were learning yesterday in the Maamor. And here we have to get creative and differentiate in Or Ein Sof itself between two levels of the Or Ein Sof. Yes, we're dealing with Or Ein Sof. The lower level of Or Ein Sof, that's where you have the concept of Eser Sfiros Hagnuzos B'Matzilon. The 10 spheres that are hidden in their emanator. And that is what we might say is the more external level of the Or Ein Sof. And that is the shoresh of the kav. Okay? So the light that's going to be re-emanated after the Tzimtzum shut down all the lights. And now we're going to turn back on the switch, and we're going to bring back light and feed it through like a thread. We're going to side, so to speak, or into the black hole. We're going to thread this light. This thread of light is not coming from the inner dimension of the Or Ein Sof, but rather it's coming from the outer dimension of the Or Ein Sof, which is called Shoresh HaKav, the root of the Kav, from the level of Eser Sfiros Hagnuzos, from the level of Or Ein Sof, where there are 10 Sfiros. In that level of light, there is already 10 Sfiros that are hidden in the emanator. In the Or Ein Sof itself, there's 10 Sfiros. However, as we learned yesterday, there is a deeper level of the Or Ein Sof, where on there, Chas v'Sholem, God forbid we should mention any type of spheres. No spheres at all. Even though yesterday we spoke about spheres. And Kate, let's leave that out. We're going to get to that later. Let's just now differentiate it into two levels. In Or Ein Sof, a higher level of Or Ein Sof, where there is no spheres at all, and that doesn't translate into the Kav. Because if that would translate into the Kav, it wouldn't be a Kav. It wouldn't be a thin thread. The fact that it's a Kav, meaning it's a focused light, and that focused light is, it gets focused already because it's focused into it has already within it the potential, so to speak, of 10 spheres. The 10 spheres that are hidden in the emanator. So now we need for a moment, I know this is, I'm talking a lot more than reading inside because this is an important understanding. What would then be the difference between the Pnimius of the Or Ein Sof that doesn't have any relationship to any type of spheres, where over there the Ramak and the Arizal will both be kind of comfortable with each other. In other words, the deeper level of Or Ein Sof, where according to the Ramak it's simple. Or Ein Sof is always simple. There's no spheres, there's no attributes. And if there is Esa spheres, Agnizos on that level, that's the root of the Kalim, that's the root of vessels, but not, God forbid, in the light. Not in the light. The light is a pure revelation of Ein Sof, and over there can't be anything. The Arizal takes the liberty, so to speak, to tag the spheres, the attributes, even into the lights, not just into the vessels. And over there, however, that's only the lower element of the Or Ein Sof, not the root of the Kalim, the root of the lights and the source of the Kav. Because according to the Arizal, the Kav itself is not with the ultimate Pshitus, at the essence of Pshitus, ultimate simple. And therefore the lights that come from the Kav, the lights of the 10 spheros post-Tzimtzum, in Keser that we said there are 10 lights, of course they're not completely pure. And then of course when they go down further into, and they flow into the world of Atzilus and they go into the Kalim, they definitely become definable and specialized, so to speak, into a specific manner. But here's the most important point. How do we differentiate between the Pnimius of the Or Ein Sof? Well, what is the concept over here? So here's the Nakuda, one Nakuda. And the difference is as follows. The Or Ein Sof, the higher level of Or Ein Sof, is the Or Ein Sof where God is just revealing himself. In other words, because who he is and what he is, it's just a revelation of who he is. That's Or. Light always is a revelation. He's just being himself. He's revealing himself. When he's revealing himself, that's a true light reflecting of him. That Or doesn't have any spheres whatsoever. It's utterly beyond any type of possibility of what we call in Chassidus, Geder v'hischalkos. Geder means to have some kind of a context. Hischalkos means any type of divisibility. It doesn't have any divisibility. It's pure light. We're going to see later that's the source of what we call Or Makif. That's the root of Or Makif, where you're dealing with pure Or Ein Sof. However, the lower level of the Or Ein Sof is where God is revealing himself, but he's revealing himself to someone. In other words, over here already, there is already an idea that he's revealing himself to a world. Not to a world yet, you're still way above a world. But the concept is that he's revealing with a purpose. He's revealing with a target. And that idea that he's revealing to a target is already makes a tzimtzum in the light. And that, even though it's still Or Ein Sof, and that tzimtzum that's in the light already creates that's what brings forth already the 10 potential spheres in that light. And that's the source, that's the concept of Or Pnimi. That's where this is like the germ of what the whole discourse, the whole beginning of the discourse is leading to. From the very first Maamor until now, he was leading and going to this point to try to show us that Or Pnimi, that internal light, that which is meant to be received inside the world, from its very, 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 very origins of origins. Even in the Or Ein Sof, he calls it the Shoresh HaKav, the root of the Kav that's in the Or Ein Sof, there is already Eser Sfiros HaGnuzos, 10 Sfiros that are embedded in the and now we have to remember that this level is still called Or Ein Sof. It's not outside of the Or Ein Sof. It's still the Or Ein Sof. But since it's the Or Ein Sof with a kavana, with an intention of revealing to a world, the point is legalois lezulasai, to reveal to someone. For that reason, every revelation to someone is already controlled. It's already with guardrails, and those guardrails are already what's bringing about the concept of Eser Sfiros, 10 spheres. Now let's be sure, as we're going to learn, the Kav is not this Or Ein Sof. This Or Ein Sof is still way too powerful for the Kav, but the Kav is the tail end of this idea, of this dimension. The Or Ein Sof that is meant to be eventually a light which he is shining to reveal to someone, not a light legaloi setzmusai, where he's just shining for himself, but a light with the intention of being illuminating to. That has already, as we spoke, 10 spheres hagnuzos, 10 hidden spheres. And since it has 10 spheres, we can find in it Chachma Bina Das, all the spheres, all the way to the Malchus, which is the last. And the Malchus itself has all 10 spheres inside of it. And as he calls it, look at the word, he says, Malchus Shebe Malchus, the kingship of the kingship. The most nether of the nether of this level of Or Ein Sof is where the Kav emanates from. Which that Kav will blast through the Tzimtzum and introduce Or Ein Sof to the worlds, to all the worlds. But they have already, since the Kav is coming from the Malchus of a light that's Ein Sof, but it contains already itself the concept, the beginnings, the seeds, if you say, the hidden potential for 10 spheres. Versus the Or Ein Sof itself for himself, over there is no spheres. So that's where the Arizal and the Ramak are not seeing eye to eye. Is the Ramak doesn't want to find in the Or Ein Sof any relationship to any kind of design, and the Arizal finds in the Or Ein Sof itself already space for spheros and definitions. Now, why does Chassidus, the Rebbe says in Hasicha, the Rebbe says that although the Ramak is true and all the Shittos are true, but the Arizal, the Rebbe says, is emes la'amitai, is the ultimate truth. What do we gain from the Shittos of the Arizal? What do we gain? What do we gain? It makes a huge difference. What's the difference? Question is, do we have a relationship with God above the Kalim of Atzilus? According to the Ramak, we don't. It's only because in Or Ein Sof, which the light of the spheres is still a continuation of that. And the Kav is for sure still a continuation of that. And then when you go all the way up, all the way into the Or Ein Sof itself, according to the Ramak, there's no room for creation at all. Creations don't have any value, significance, meaning, connection. The entire beginning of our existence is in the Kalim of Atzilus. Now, Kalim are Kalim. So does God really, is God really affected by us? Is God really triggered by us? Do we matter to him in his Ein Sof? Yes, in his constricted state when he went of the Kalim, and when he feeds the lights into the Kalim. And even then it only appears so to the onlooker, but really the lights remain pure and infinite, and therefore unaffected. So God really remains unaffected by everything with us. But according to the Arizal, think about it. Since the concept of Esespheros is already to be found in the Or Ein Sof, in the Esespheros Agnuzos. So yes, it's the Esespheros Agnuzos as it's the Or Ein Sof as it is with an intention of revealing itself. But the fact that that's Or Ein Sof is pinning us into God Almighty himself. And that we matter on that level. And on that level we can make a difference. So it's a world of a difference. So more to speak of Be'ezus Hashem as we learn it inside, but this is just the idea. So I know I spent most of the time explaining, but I think we explained quite a lot today. So let's read a little bit inside. Where is it over here? Where is it? Again, he brings the idea of the Ramak, that according to the Ramak, the Esespheres Agnuzos, the hidden spheres, is only Sharshei HaKelim, is only the roots of the Kelim. According to what we learned earlier, Shegamba Oiros the Esespheres, Yeshloim Shayches Chachma v'Chesed, that even in the lights of the 10 spheres there is a Shayches, already a beginning of Chachma and Chesed. Rak Shenikra B'li Ma, it's called B'li Ma, Legabe HaKelim, the Esespheres, only and compared to the vessels. Imkain Esespheres Agnuzos Shalamai Lamaharishimu, comes out that the 10 spheres that are hidden, that are above the Rishimu. Again, the Rishimu is the source of the Kelim, which according to the Ramak, the Rishimu is the source of the Kelim, and according to the Ramak, above the Rishimu, there is Esespheres Hagnuzos, but that's really the Rishimu on a deeper level. The Esespheres Hagnuzos, according to the Ramak, is interlocked with the Rishimu because they're both related to vessels and to Kelim. It's only probably an Esespheres Hagnuzos again, I haven't seen this specifically, but I would imagine that based on this idea, that the Rishimu, on a higher level, as the Rishimu was still in the Or, remember we learned that before the Tzimtzum, the Rishimu was indifferentiable from the Or Ein Sof. So this is kind of the idea, even though according to the Ramak there is no Tzimtzum, but the concept is that Rishimu is when the Rishimu is more present. Or maybe the Ramak doesn't even talk about Rishimu, because again, Rishimu is a trace of the light after the Tzimtzum. So according to the Ramak, we forget about Rishimu. We're saying like this, that there is a source in the Or Ein Sof for Kelim, for vessels. Obviously, if God created vessels, in the end, he brought about the spheres. It's a koach hagavul, it's the power of limitation that's in Hashem. So that's according to the Ramak. But according to the Arizal, that the Rishimu is the source of the Kelim. There is design already in the lights itself, which come from the Kav. So then we can bring that even more back and say, the 10 spheres that are hidden, that are above the Rishimu, they are the root of the lights, the Esespheres Atzilus, of the 10 spheres of Atzilus. Again, but that's the nether part of the light. Remember what we said. And that's what he explains over here. But the Or Ein Sof himself, for himself,
not what he is shining to shine to someone, but the light for himself, of himself for himself. Even the revelation of Atzmus, not just Atzmus himself. Atzmus himself, of course, but even the light that emanates from him, which is the revelation of the essence, of course, which is not for anybody. It is completely above the substance of 10 spheroids. It's not possible to speak of spheroids attributes in that level at all. The essa spheroids agnuzois, or he says over here, the essa spheroids de oirois. Remember, this whole Maamor over here is the Rebbe Rashab really quoting his grandfather, the Tzemach Tzedek, and then adding explanations. So here, he's actually just bringing down verbatim the words of his grandfather, but he's making a tikkun in the words of in the Tzemach Tzedek and Oira Torah. It says Esa Spheres Hagnuzais, but the Rebbe Rashab says the Esa Spheres the Oirais, and the 10 spheres that are in the lights, Hanikra Beli Ma, they are called without substance, Ubeli Gvul, and without a limit. Legabe Esa Spheres the Kalim. When you match them up to the 10 spheres of the Kalim, Shenatzlu Mareshimu, that they come from the Reshimu, and that is a power of Gevul, and therefore these Kalim are real Gevul, are real limitation. Because the lights are emanated and drawn forth from the light that's above the Reshimu. Which from the light, not from the Reshimu, from the light above the Reshimu is where the Kav comes from. And that is considered Belima without a substance compared to the Kalim, which they're in. But if you compare the Kav and the Esespheres of the Oirais, and even the source of the Kav, which is the Esespheres Hagnuzais that are hidden, if you compare that to the Oirein Sof himself, as he is for himself, they are also considered already the root and the source of Gvul, of limitation, because even the lights have some measure or some element of design and of subtle differentiations and design. And based on this, he's going to answer a very important question that comes up in Kabbalah, Be'ezus Hashem, in next class. Meanwhile, let Mashiach be here today.